Thank you for tuning in to the best parenting show on the internet, Post Daily Dose.
It's the Post. It's the Post. It's the Post. The Post Daily Dose. It's the Post. It's the Post. It's the Post. The Post Daily Dose. It's the Post. It's the Post.
Hey gang, welcome to another episode of Post Daily Dose with me, your trusted parenting advisor, faithful guide, and servant on the healing journey. What's my name? Big Papa Brian+Post. Good evening, everyone. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the hormone that I learned about that changed everything. I believe it changes everything for parents. I believe it changes everything for educators. I believe it changes everything for humanity. And I didn't quite realize it until I discovered it. And I didn't discover it until I heard about it, until I learned about it. It's very cold here in Oklahoma this evening. There's this big frenzy of, hello, Mom. There's this big frenzy of fear. The weathermen were forecasting that we were going to have all this ice and snow and storms. And I'm like, golly. And people are running to the grocery store and stocking up on all their bread and water. And then the weatherman comes on and he's like, it's not going to be as bad as we thought, ladies and gentlemen. Well, actually, ladies and gentlemen, it's not going to be anything except for cold. Like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And they were even showing all the people on the news buying all this stuff. So, just goes to tell you, you can't predict what God has in store for us. So, let's see. Probably, I'm going to say maybe 12 years ago, 12 years ago, 10 years ago, let's say 10. I was in Virginia and I was working, hello, Laura. I was working, running one of our treatment homes. And a lady called me for an interview. She wanted to do an interview about my work with stress and trauma. Her name was Susan Kachinskas. She was writing a book. So we had the interview, and then a couple months later, the book got published, and she sent me a copy of the book, and it's called The Chemistry of Connection. And that's Susan Kachinskas, Kuchinskas. Susan Kachinskas. And it is The Chemistry of Connection was the book. And so I started reading the book, and I'm not sure why I picked it, because I get a lot of books. People send me a lot of books to review, to write forewords for, and I don't get a chance to read as much as I used to, unless it's very specific to a project that I'm working on. But I remember I picked up that book and I started reading it, and it was really interesting. She was talking about a hormone called oxytocin. So I thought it was interesting. She put me, probably had a whole chapter in the book. So I thought that's cool. So I said, Susan, let me interview you for my parenting inner circle, because I was running it at the time. And Christy runs it now. And so we got on the phone, and I still remember where I'm sitting. It's so interesting that I've had these light bulb moments throughout my career. Just absolutely light bulb, like the light comes on, and that awareness, that awakening, it's like a paradigm shift. So I've had these paradigm shifts throughout my career, just like these moments of, whoa, gosh, that's going to change my life. And so at this point in time, I've been teaching, stress and trauma for the better part of, maybe 7 or 8 years. So I'd been doing it for quite a while, probably 10 years even. And we were talking, and she starts talking about oxytocin being the brain's anti-stress hormone. Well, most of you know that I developed the stress model, which states that all behavior arises from a state of stress. In between the behavior and the stress is the presence of a primary emotion. There are only 2 primary emotions, love and fear. It's through the expression, the processing, and the understanding of the fear that we can calm the stress and diminish the behavior. So the stress model is a kind of a theory on human behavior. not just for children, but for all of us. It applies to everyone. And so she said that oxytocin was the brain's anti-stress hormone. I was aware of cortisol, and I remember stopping her. I'm going to find that interview, and I'm going to share that with you guys. I think I may have just ran across it the other day, actually. I remember stopping her, and I was like, okay, well, slow down for a minute, Susan. So there's this hormone in the brain. She's like, yes, that when you have stress, this hormone's supposed to basically turn on and calm the stress down. It's like there's hot water running, which is the cortisol, and then the oxytocin is like the cold water. You turn on the cold water to cool down the hot water, and the water continues to run, but it's just not as hot anymore. And I said, so this hormone is essentially what helps children to calm down. She said, yes, this hormone is the hormone that makes love possible. So the hormone oxytocin is the hormone that makes love possible. Now, if you've had children, and if you've had the opportunity to, go through the birthing process, the labor process, then you've probably heard doctors talk about Pitocin. Pitocin is the sister to oxytocin. It is similar, but they give Pitocin to induce labor. And so oxytocin really functions in much the same way. But oxytocin, Susan explained, is a learned response in the brain. So you can, if you're a child, you think about it as an infant. By the time, so when you start development, your neurologic development, fetal development, your brainstem and then your amygdala start to function pretty early. So they start to produce cortisol, because cortisol is actually, it's like fuel that helps us turn on. It's a fire. Stress is good. It actually helps us to grow, and it helps us to thrive. So your amygdala, which produces cortisol, happens automatic, and it produces and functions and grows and thrives and comes fully online by the time you're 18 months old. But your oxytocin response, which is regulated by your hypothalamus, is not fully online by the time you're 18 months old. In fact, it is a learned response in your brain. So your cortisol, your amygdala reaction is natural. It's automatic. Your hypothalamic response to your amygdala reaction is not. It is learned. And the way you learn it is by having parents who soothe you when you're stressed, having parents who hold you, who calm you, who nurture you, breastfeed you, who change you when you're dirty, who play with you, who are attuned and attentive and affectionate. Attuned, attentive, and affectionate. So when a mother is breastfeeding a child, we think that, that's giving the child this really good nutrition, and this bonding is happening. But really what's happening for both the mother and the child and the infant is they are both releasing oxytocin. And that's why breastfeeding has been associated to the similarity of heroin, because it's that the oxytocin response is that strong, because it's flooding the body. It is the oxytocin response which then opens the body up to the attachment and bonding process. Right? If you are stressed, you cannot attach and you cannot bond. So that's actually how I came to formulate the stress model. I came to understand that it's because at that time, and I'm diverting just a little bit. At that time, everyone was focused on attachment. Everyone was focused on behaviors and doing these behavior interventions with these children to create attachment, to take away their control, to take away their power, to break them down was a very common. And this is in the late 90s, early 2000s, when reactive attachment disorder was just kind of coming, into the mainstream. And so it was all this kind of negative, in my opinion, this negative intensity towards children and their behaviors, these challenging, stressed out, traumatized children. And I really started questioning at that time, like what, I love the concept of attachment. That's a beautiful concept, but what is it that leads to attachment? Well, it took me several years and a lot of study and just a lot of asking that same question before it just clicked in my brain. As another one of those light bulb moments, that it was stress. As long as you are stressed, you can't develop attachment. As long as you are stressed, a parent cannot bond with their child. A child cannot attach to their parents. It's very important that then that changed all of my work, because then I recognized in that moment that to create more stress for already stressed out children was actually going to be counterproductive, because some of the therapy techniques that I had learned at that time were actually very stress inducing, I believe, for the parents and for the children. And so I really shifted my philosophy and my approach in working with families when I realized that by creating more stress was actually counterproductive to the process, which then ties right in. And this is why when I was interviewing Susan for our parents, that's why it hit me so hard, because I realized in that moment, oh my gosh, oxytocin is actually what we're going for. And thankfully by that time, everything that I was doing, everything I've been teaching actually was working towards that. So all of my love-based practices and principles were actually geared towards creating an oxytocin response, but I didn't know that word. And so when I came to understand oxytocin, I realized how much more powerful and important eye contact is, how much more powerful and important touch is, how much more powerful and important laughter is, joy and wrestling and eating together. That's what makes a family meal so healthy and so important, is because everyone's regulating. And if everyone's regulating, it's because they're releasing oxytocin. That's why breathing is so important. When you breathe, you turn on your opportunity for oxytocin. That's why meditation is so important. Prayer, mindfulness, all of these things are all geared towards creating oxytocin. So when you have these stressed out children and you become stressed out too as the parent, you can't connect. It's like, so in my lectures, I always used to say to people, we have trillions of cells in our body, and every cell in our body has consciousness. So I would say, put down your ink pens right now and ball your hands into a fist. Pretend this is one of the cells in your body. Now, when I say stress, I want you to ball it into survival, because we either constrict into survival or we're open and thriving. And that's, so it's survival or thriving. It's survival or thriving. Survival or thriving. I'm getting my balance is a little off. My proprioceptory system isn't working quite right this evening. So we got surviving or we got thriving. And I used to say, okay, when I say stress, ball your hands into a fist. Stress, you are stressed out, ball them really tight. And I used to say, then in that state of stress, I want you to shake hands with the person next to you. And you can't, because you're stressed. And as long as you're stressed, you're emitting more cortisol and you're in survival. And this is what happens in families. Families move into survival and they can't connect. And then if you do that long enough, guess what? It starts to hurt. You start to be in pain. This is where suffering in families is all rooted in. The oxytocin is shut down. The oxytocin response is diminished. Sometimes it is depleted. This is why Big Papa says to parents, when you're really stressed, sometimes you just got to close the door to your bedroom and pour yourself a glass of wine and run yourself a bubble bath and light some candles and put on some Diana Krall or some soft, gentle music, some Norah Jones, and just chill. Because what that does is that helps turn on your oxytocin. See, bubble baths, massage, candles, meals, nice meals, good food, all these things induce oxytocin. And as long as we're stressed, we're not releasing oxytocin. So in your day-to-day, kind of moment-to-moment parenting interactions, I want you to put in your head, is what I'm doing releasing oxytocin, or is what I'm doing supporting cortisol? See, it's cortisol and oxytocin. Cortisol is the stress hormone. Oxytocin is the love hormone. But the oxytocin hormone is learned Okay, so by the time you're 3 is when the hippocampus comes on. So the hypothalamus starts to come online right around that time too with the hippocampus. So by the time you're 3, you just now fully start to have the ability, and this is in healthy normal development. By the time you're 3, you just start to have the ability to calm your own stress. This is why letting babies cry themselves to sleep makes no sense whatsoever. They don't have the capacity to calm themselves down. They calm themselves into exhaustion, and it's not calm at all, right? It's hypoarousal. So you don't let babies cry themselves to sleep because they can't calm themselves down. So until you're 3 years old, your brain is not even at the place where you can begin to calm your own stress. So that's why we as the parents are the extended regulatory figures to our children, because we are supplying them oxytocin. We are teaching their brain to turn on oxytocin. That's why you're calm with your child when they're upset instead of stressed out. Because if you're stressed out with them, you either stress them out even more or you overwhelm them and they just shut down. Well, then their brain's not learning oxytocin. So think oxytocin, think love hormone, think how can we create more oxytocin for ourselves? How can we create more oxytocin for our children? And you'll have a breakthrough. It's just amazing. It's powerful. It's changed my life. I think about oxytocin all the time. I think about stress. I think about oxytocin. I think about breathing. I think about fear. So remember, in any situation, you always have 2 choices. I'm going to change it up on you just a little bit. You can continue to react and pump out cortisol. And you can feed into those old imprints of fear and overwhelm and stress and flood your brain with cortisol. Or you can stop, you can take 3 to 10 deep breaths, you can slow down, you can turn on your oxytocin response, and then you make love possible. I hope you'll make love possible in your homes, in your lives. I hope when you close your eyes tonight that you breathe and that leads you into a deep, restful sleep. Tomorrow is Saturday. Tomorrow's going to be a good day for you. So you lay down, get restored, get refreshed, get reinvigorated. Have a good Saturday, good relaxing weekend. Oh, you don't have to parent tomorrow. Did you know that you don't have to parent tomorrow? Big Papa says tomorrow is no parenting day. So tomorrow, just let the kids do whatever they want to do. You don't have to parent. I'm giving everyone a free parenting pass. So here, I'm making it rain. Free parenting passes. Free parenting passes tomorrow. No one has to parent tomorrow. Make sure the kids get food, have food, access to food, and TV and whatever, but you don't have to parent. You just get to relax and have some oxytocin. All right, God bless each and every one of you. Choose love.